Hello and welcome to a new story. Today's story is My Greatest Olympic Prize, and this is the autobiography of Jesse Owens, who was a winner athlete in the 1936 Berlin Olympics, a record 4 gold medal winner. In 1936 Berlin Olympics, there was a racial attitude because the Olympics were being held in Berlin and Germany was ruled by Nazi party headed by Der Führer Adolf Hitler, and Hitler propounded the theory that the German or the Nordic race is superior in all terms and means to any other race in the world. So, in 1936 Olympics, Hitler wanted to show the supremacy of the German race to all other races. In this background, these Olympics were organized. And for these Olympics, a black American Negro, Jesse Owens, was working very hard for the last couple of years, and he was very sure to win a gold medal in a long jump, broad jump. But as soon as he visited Berlin, covering the distance of 4,000 miles, he was amazed to see a 6 feet tall athlete, Luz Long, who was a true representation of German race. So Jesse Owens was very much angry with the Hitlers insisting on supremacy of the Nordic race or the German race. He thought that if Luz Long wins the race, then it will be verified that black Americans or black people are nowhere in comparison to the German race. An angry athlete is an athlete who do a mistake. So that was the case with Jesse Owens. He was disqualified for even the qualifying rounds. He made fouls. And interestingly, Luz Long came to him and advised him, gave him some tips. And that tips worked for Jesse Owens, and he qualified for the finals. Luz Long was very much aware of the fact that if Jesse qualifies for the finals, his gold medal is threatened. But he showed the true sportsmanship, and Jesse Owens, who was very much angry with the Hitler's insisting on Aryan supremacy, but he judged Luz Long with his personal attitude. So they both were true sportsperson, and they held a meeting in an Olympic village by the evening, where Luz gave the tip to Jesse that it's tomorrow that count. And the next day, when the event occurred, Jesse Owens won the race, and after winning 4 gold medals, and that German was the first to congratulate Jesse Owens, and Hitler glaring both of them 100 yards up from there. So this was the setting of the story, and I told you story in the sense that this is the true example of sportsmanship. The story is chronological, it's autobiography, and it's a true spirit of Olympics, for which Pierre de Coubertin organized the Olympics. So, with this background, I do start the story, and let's try to understand that. So, it was the summer of 1936. The Olympic Games were being held in Berlin. So, as discussed, in the summer of 1936, the Olympic Games were due to be held in Berlin, capital of Germany. Because Hitler childishly insisted that his performers were members of a master race, nationalistic feelings were at all-time high. So, in this sports event, due to the insisting of Hitler that German race or the master race will take off all the medals, so nationalistic feelings were at high level, because the participants were from all over the world and all are not Germans. So, as it is autobiography, so Luzlong is Jesse Owens is telling that I wasn't too worried about this, because the narrator of this story is, this autobiography is Jesse Owens. So, I wasn't too worried about all this. So, he was not worried about this, all this. I do trained, sweated and disciplined myself for 6 years. So, he has been training himself for the last 6 years. He has been sweating for the last 6 years to win a medal in this Olympics. And he was rather disciplined athlete with the games in mind, and he was practicing all this with the games in his mind. So, while I was going over on the boat, all I could think about was taking home 1 or 2 of those gold medals. So, while he was on the way to Berlin through the boat, he was thinking that he will take 1 or 2 gold medals to the home, because he was very much sure that he will take 1 or 2 gold medals. A year before, I had my eyes especially on running broad jump. So, Jesse Owens was targeting this long jump, broad jump. A year before, as a sophomore at Ohio State University, I do set the world record of 26 feet 8, 104 inches. So, before a year, when Jesse was a second year student at the Ohio State University, sophomore is a second year student in any university. So, at that instance, Jesse set a record, world record of 26 feet 8 and a quarter of inches. So, everyone was expecting to win the Olympic events in that, and Jesse Owens was himself very confident in winning this track and field event. So, I was in for a surprise. So, Jesse was, as the narrator is Jesse Owens, so it is told by Jesse, I was in for a surprise when the time came for the broad jump trials. So, the time came when there were trial for the broad jump. I was startled, frightened to see a tall boy, and there was a tall boy over there besides Jesse, hitting the pit at almost 26 feet on his practice leaps. So, he was hitting almost 26 feet in his practice, and the world record set by Jesse was 26 feet 8 and a quarter of inches. So, that tall boy was frightening Jesse Owens, and he turned out to be a German named Luzlong, and he was a German Luzlong. I was told that Hitler has kept him under wraps, evidently hoping to win the jump with him. So, Hitler has not exposed him to the world. He was trained in the German camps, and he was kept under wraps so that he might take off the medals of the jump. Now, Jesse Owens was very much frightened and in anger. So, he is telling, he is writing, I guess that if long ones, so Jesse is saying that he guessed that if Luzlong ones, it would add some new support to the Nazis' Aryan superiority theory. So, what would happen if Luzlong wins? If Luzlong win in the race, it would give a push to this Aryan superiority theory propounded by Hitler. After all, I am a Negro and Jesse Owens is a Negro, a little hot under his collar about Hitler ways. So, Jesse was angry, little hot under his collar means angry, extremely angry. I determined to go out there and really show Der Führer and his master race who was superior and who wasn't. So, Jesse Owens was extremely angry and he was making mind to challenge Der Führer Hitler, that he will show that who is superior, Aryans or Negroes. An angry athlete is an athlete who will make mistake. So, if the athlete is angry, he is going to commit mistakes, as any coach will tell you. So, as coaches tell this, that don't get angry. So, I was no exception, Jesse Owens was no exceptions. On my first of my 3 qualifying jumps, so he had his trials in his qualifying jumps, I leaped from several inches beyond the takeoff board for a foul. So, in the 3 qualifying jumps, he made a foul and beyond the takeoff board, touching the line. On his second jump, I fouled even worse. So, in the first trial, he was failed, he fouled, and in the second jump, it was even worse, he fouled. So, he was asking himself a question, did I came here 3000 miles for this, for making fouls? I thought bitterly to foul out of the trials and make a fool of myself. So, did I came 3000 miles to make a fool of myself? I could not even qualify for the finals. I am making fouls continuously. And why is this happening? Because Jesse Owens is too much angry, hot under his collar. So, walking a few yards from the pit, I kicked disgustedly at the dart. So, in vain, what did Jesse Owens did? Disgustedly, he kicked the dirt. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Suddenly, a hand came on Jesse's shoulder. I turned, looked into the friendly blue eyes of the tall German broad jumper. So, there besides me was standing the tall German jumper, broad jumper with blue eyes, and he was Luzlong. He has already qualified for the finals on his first attempt. So, Jesse could not make even in the second attempt, and Luzlong had qualified the finals in the first attempt only. So, first of all, Luzlong offered him a handshake. Now, Jesse Owens, I am Luzlong. He told Jesse Owens, I am Luzlong. I don't think we have met. So, Luzlong started talking in this way. So, there are dialogues in this. So, it is one of the interesting part of the story, that dialogue is shown in the story. So, Luzlong started communicating with Jesse Owens that I don't think we have met. He spoke English well enough with a German twist to it. So, Luzlong could speak good English with a German twist to that. Glad to meet you, I said then. So, Jesse Owens said, glad to meet you, and trying to hide my nervousness. So, Jesse Owens was trying to hide his nervousness and he said that glad to meet you, how are you? So, Luzlong said, I am fine. The question is, how are you? So, he put a counter question that I am fine. The actual question is, how are you? What do you mean? I asked. So, Jesse Owens asked, what do you mean by asking like this? So, Luzlong said, something must be eating you. Something is troubling you. He said, and while saying this, he was proud the way foreigners are when they are mastered a bit of American slang. So, when foreigners rather master American slang, if they can talk a little in American slang, they feel proud. So, in similar way, Luzlong felt proud. Then he said, you should be able to qualify with your eyes closed. He admired Jesse Owens that you are such a great athlete, you must have qualified with your closed eyes. Why are you making these fouls? He wanted to say like this. So, Jesse Owens replied, believe me, I know it. I told him and it felt good to say that to someone. So, Jesse Owens said that I know it, and Jesse Owens felt good to share it with someone. And for the next few minutes, we talked together. So, both Luz Long and Jesse Owens talked together. I didn't tell Long what was eating me. So, Jesse Owens didn't told that what was eating him, but he seemed to understand my anger. But Luz Long understood the anger and took pains to reassure me. So, he reassured him. Although he had been schooled in the Nazi youth movement, so Luz Long was trained in the Nazi youth movement, and he didn't believe in the Aryan supremacy. Although he was a German, but he didn't believe in the Aryan supremacy. He didn't believe in the theory of Hitler. We laughed over the fact that he really looked the part. Through an inch taller than I, he had a lean muscular frame, clean, blue eyes, blonde hair, and a strikingly handsome chiseled face. So, Jesse Owens said that he looked like a model of German Aryan supremacy, and his gestures were blue eyes, muscular frame, blonde hair, obviously brown, and a strikingly handsome chiseled face, the sharp features in the face. Finally, seeing that I calmed down somewhat, he pointed me to take off board. So, when he saw that I was a little calm, he pointed to the take off board. So, he was pointing his finger to the take off board, from where I had to make a trial. Look, he said. Now, he gave a tip. Why don't you draw a line few inches in back of the board? So, you are making, he said, you are making continuously fouls. So, why don't you draw a line a few inches back from the original line, actual line, and aim making to take off from there? And why don't you take off from there? In that case, you will not foul, and you will certainly out jump far enough to qualify. In that case, you will not foul. What does it matter if you don't come first in the trials? And suppose you don't come first in the trials, it doesn't matter, because tomorrow is what counts. So, Luz Long understood that Jesse Owens is nervous. That's why he is continuously making fouls, and he recognized that he is a great athlete. So, he assured him that you should pass today, and tomorrow is what counts. So, today if you don't come first in the trial, that doesn't matter. So, you just draw a line few inches before the actual line, then you will be sure that you will not making to do a foul. That idea helped Jesse Owens too much. Suddenly, all the tension seemed to be ebbed out from my body. So, all the tension ebbed out, vanished, as the truth of what he said hit me. So, what he was saying, it was clearly caught by Jesse Owens. Confidently, I drew a line, full foot in the back of my board. So, Jesse Owens just got a foot behind, back of the board, and proceeded to jump from there. And then he gave the trial. He proceeded to jump from there, and he qualified with almost a foot to spare, and he qualified with almost edging a foot. So, in this way, with the advice of Luz Long, Jesse Owens qualified, otherwise he would have been failed. And Luz Long understood the fact that if I am going to help Jesse Owens, my gold medal is in danger, because he was knowing he is a great athlete. Still, he gave advice to him, and with that advice, Jesse Owens qualified the trials. And that night, I walked over to the Luz Long room in the Olympic Village to thank him. And at that night, he was an Aryan German and he was a Negro. And in true sportsman feeling, no race is coming between them. In the evening, Jesse Owens went to the Luz Long's room to thank him for what he has done in the daytime. I knew that if I hadn't been for him, I probably wouldn't be jumping to the finals of the following day. Jesse Owens was well recognizing that if Luz did not help him, he would not be able to qualify for the finals. We sat in his quarters and talked for 2 hours. So they sat in the quarters of Luz Long and they talked for 2 hours about track and field. Multiple topics were there. They talked about track and field, they talk about ourselves, themselves, and the word situation and dozen other things. So for 2 hours they were talking on several topics. And when finally I got up to leave, we both knew that a real friendship has been formed. So in those 2 hours, a real friendship has been formed between a Negro athlete and an Aryan athlete who has been trained in a Nazi movement. Luz would go out to the field the next day trying to beat me if he could. So what is going to happen next day? Luz Long will try to beat Jesse Owens. But I know that he wanted me to do the best, but Luz Long always wanted that Jesse Owens should do his best, and although he'll do his best, so even if I meant by winning, and even if Jesse Owens wins, that will be acceptable to Luz Long. He wanted Jesse to do his best. As it turned out, Luz broke his own past record, and when the race started, what happened? Luz Long broke his own record. In doing so, he pushed me onto the peak performance, and when he did so, Jesse Owens was fired to do his peak performance. I remember that at the instant I landed from my final jump, the one which set the Olympic record. So in that case, Jesse Owens set an Olympic record. Luz Long broke his own record, but Jesse Owens set an Olympic record, 26 feet 5 and 5 upon 16 inches. And when Jesse Owens set an Olympic record beating Luz Long, he was at my side, means Luz Long was at the side of Jesse Owens, congratulating me, despite the fact that Hitler glared at us from the stand not 100 yards away. And Hitler was looking with anger in both of them that Jesse Owens has beaten Luz Long and Luz Long is congratulating Jesse Owens. Hitler was very angry to see this. But despite of the fact, Luz Long congratulated Jesse Owens. Luz shook my hand, and it wasn't a fake smile with a broken heart sort of grip either. And although Luz Long won the silver medal, but that was not a smile of broken heart. He congratulated him full-heartedly. And now what Jesse Owens saying? You can melt down all the gold medals and cups I have, and they couldn't be plating on a 24-carat friendship. So you can melt all my gold medals and cups that I have, but that cannot even plate this 24-carat friendship between myself and Luz Long. I felt for Luz Long at that moment. So what Jesse Owens was feeling for Luz Long at that moment, because he was that person who helped him to qualify for the finals, and now that Jesse Owens has beaten him. So I realized that too, that Luz was the epitome of what Pierre de Coubertin, founder of the modern Olympic Games, must have in mind when he said. So now Jesse Owens thought that this is a true sportsmanship for which Olympics are being organized, and for which Pierre de Coubertin once said that the important thing in the Olympic Games is not winning but taking part. So the most important part of Olympic is that you need not to win, you need to take part. The essential thing in life is not conquering but fighting well. So the essential thing in life is that fight well. What one conquers is not important. So fighting well is important, and Luz Long was the epitome of friendship, and he has shown that sportsmanship is above all prejudice and bias of race, caste, in all these political propaganda. So this was the story. That was an autobiography written by Jesse Owens, and the friendship that started from this 1936 Berlin Olympic lasted for several years until Luzlang was killed in an action in World War II. Till date, they remain the two great athletes, one Negro and one Aryan. They remained one of the best friends. So, it is a great example of true friendship, a 24 carat friendship. Thank you very much for being with me.